Welcome to GBN America. I'm Nana Akua. Like an ex who thinks he can weasel his way back into your affections, Prince Harry has apparently offered to lend a hand with royal duties if needed. Are you having a laugh? The very fact that he's offered this with no real hint of an apology goes to show how little understanding he has of the damage and emotional hurt he's inflicted on his family and their mental health. He's supposed to be an advocate for this. 10 hours or so after flying over to see his dad, Harry told Good Morning America that he loves his family. Funny way of showing it. And when asked whether illness could unify them, he said, "Yeah, sure." Pretty non-committal. His behaviour has sadly overshadowed the work that he's doing for the Invictus Games, which is a real shame. A few days ago, the Duke of Sussex was in Vancouver to promote it, and he held talks with a First Nations chief about the Crown's historic commitment to Canada's Indigenous people. He said he hoped to learn more about Canada's reconciliation process. His words were, "Our collective journey through truth and reconciliation is an important one for us all." Bit of a word salad. Reconciliation. I don't know how they kept a straight face. He's definitely got a lot to learn there. In the meantime, Prince William, who is still caring for his sick wife Catherine, has apparently received the accolade as the world's most popular man. He's planning a 24-home build on the Duchy of Cornwall, land which he owns, hoping to tackle homelessness. He's also expressed his concerns over the suffering of the people of Gaza. We're all concerned for everybody in that conflict, but probably best for him to stay out of that one. This never went well for his dad, who was well known for his political meddling. It's a complex situation, and one probably best left to the politicians, he thinks. Well, last week, a royal biographer released the inside story of the real relationship between King Charles III and his mother, Queen. She says it boasts the two most important components of any riveting royal read: history and histrionics. The author of My Mother and I, royal expert and biographer and editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, Ingrid Seward, joins GBN America. Ingrid, thank you so much for joining me. Let's get straight into the nitty-gritty of the book and the forewarning to others and our watchers here that there may be some spoilers, so if you don't want to spoil yourself, then look away. But Ingrid, so talk to me about this book and your motivation for writing it.
Well, I think I thought it was a really nice idea to write about Charles and his mum. Of course, it always is a nice idea, but when it actually comes down to it, it's just very hard work. And there were all kinds of things going on in life at that moment. So it took me a bit longer than perhaps it should have done. But I wanted to explain a bit more about that very important relationship between mother and son. And this was a woman, the Queen, who, as Princess Elizabeth, had Charles literally a year after her marriage. So she got married in 47, had Charles in 48, and by 52 she was Queen. So she had very, very little time. She had 4 years to enjoy motherhood, and during that time, because of her father, King George VI's illness, she and the Duke of Edinburgh were travelling a lot. And representing the king on visits and all kinds of things, in a way perhaps which Prince William is doing now with his father. But she just wasn't able to enjoy motherhood in the way that perhaps we would like to think that we do today.
Do you think that that's one of the things that shaped the way he is towards his children? Because I do remember seeing this thing with Prince Harry when he heard of how his mother died, and he said that his dad sat at the end of his bed and just told him it, and I don't think that there was any hugging or any really close emotional contact. I'm wondering, how much do you know about what his relationship was like with his mother, and do you think that level of detachment, because obviously she pretty much was Queen before she had a chance to really spend lots of time with him, has shaped the way he is today towards his own children?
Well, I think we learnt a lot when Jonathan Dimbleby wrote an authorised biography of Charles, and he talked about how the fact that his mother had never hugged him, and he had a very strained relationship with his father, and that the love that he received was really from the royal nannies. There was a nanny Lightbody and nanny Mabel Anderson, and they were are mothers to him. So he had the love, but not from his mother. And I think this stuck in his mind for a long time. But I mean, then of course, they had a rapprochement, and the Queen was very, very proud of Charles and felt more able to express her love for him when she had a little bit more time to do so. So, and you have to remember that in the 50s, parents did not hug their children and mollycoddle them in a way that perhaps we think is completely normal today. It just, in public, it wasn't just aristocratic families, it was most families. It just wasn't a lot of, oh, I love you, and a lot of hugging and kissing. It just didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, I suppose my parents were a bit detached as well. In the olden days, as it were, I used to be jealous of a lot of my friends. Their parents seemed to be able to cuddle them and tell them that they loved them. But nothing less about me, though. You also talk about the fact that there was an alternative path for him and that he may have married somebody else. What happened with that?
Well, he fell in love with Camilla Shand, as she was then, when she was, he was 22, she was 23, and they were introduced by a mutual friend. And then he was sent off to sea. He was sent on deployed, join his career in the Navy. And during that time, Camilla sort of returned to her boyfriend, Andrew Parker Bowles, who was always the one that got away. And eventually she married him, and Charles was fairly heartbroken when this happened, but they remained friends.
Oh, I see. So that was his... And you see, that's it, isn't it? And actually, Princess Diana did say at the time that it was true love and she really couldn't compete with that, which is true. And in a way, I'm happy for him that he's finally with the person that he wants to be with. But when he spoke about his mother, and particularly at her funeral, you could see there was a real bond with her and a real connection. Did that bond get stronger in your view over time, and that they managed to get more mother and son time? Because with all the royal family, it seems that they're talking to each other through secretaries and never really speaking to each other.
You're absolutely right. I mean, they don't really speak to each other that often. But and also the Queen is very hard to approach because she's not. She wasn't, let's say, she wasn't used to any kind of moral conflict. She was used to conflict, but not moral conflict. So when Diana used to come into her sitting room and crying and saying, my husband hates me and everybody hates me and, woe is me, and start crying, the Queen just didn't know how to deal with it. And later on, the Queen felt that had she been more able to cope with Diana, the marriage, she might have been able to help a bit more with the marriage. And Charles then used to ring out and say, you don't understand my wife, she's impossible, she's impossible. And he would scream down the phone at his mother. That was probably the low point of their relationship. And then I think that the Queen began to understand the complexities of Diana's character and have a lot more sympathy for her son. And she felt in the end that she never, ever thought about divorce. She was horrified at the idea. Remember, she was head of the church, defender of the faith, and she was horrified at the idea of divorce. But eventually it came to that after Diana given that interview to Panorama. And she saw no way forward because Charles and Diana, the War of the Welleses, was overtaking every other news story. And that's really not what a head of state wants.
I can remember all this. Yeah.
You remember it, do you?
Yeah, I do.
Every day, and there were billboards.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they go to an event and...
Carry on.
They go to an event and Princess Diana would be like in the shadows, sort of looking miserable and glum, and the cameras would be on her, wondering why she was like that. And she never seemed happy when they were together, and they were always... It never looked good. Just very briefly on the book, though, how did you get all this information, Ingrid?
Well, I've been in this business a long, long time, and it was you used to have much more access to people. I'm not just talking about the royals, but there was a lot more access. It was a lot friendlier, and you gather things over the years, and people tell me a lot of things. I don't know why, but I'm delighted that they do.
Well, it's going to make a very cracking read. I'm looking forward to that one. So this is Ingrid's book, My Mother and I. Fabulous book. It looks fabulous, isn't it? Great. Now, Ingrid, I wanted to ask you, Prince Harry, let's get straight in there.
Yes.
He is saying that he could help out, maybe. I mean, it's almost as though he has literally no understanding of the damage that he's caused and that he thinks he can just simply offer himself back in at some point.
Well, you're so right. He doesn't seem to have any understanding, but I don't think I think actually, in his favour, slightly his words were twisted. And I think friends said he'd like to come back. Harry would really like to come back and help if, when his father wasn't well. But Harry should have been aware that anything he said was going to be twisted, because that's just how news gets around. That's how newspapers and things get stories. They slightly alter it, not so it's wrong, but it's got a different slant on it. So Harry should have been more careful, really, what he said. But he probably does think that he could walk back in, but he certainly couldn't.
No. If anything, the British public wouldn't have it anyway, because we're paying for them. So that would pretty much be the end of the royal family if he thought that he was just going to come in. I think at that point, even I would probably lose a little bit of loyalty and think, forget it, I'm not paying for him. Ingrid, it's really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me. That is, of course, the brilliant Ingrid Seward. Thank you. The fabulous Ingrid Seward, royal commentator. Well, next up, broadcast journalist and royal commentator Pandora Forsyth joins me now to talk more about Harry and Meghan and their involvement, or perhaps lack of it, with the royal family, and what that means for the couple going forward. So Pandora, oh God, we've got Harry and Meghan. He's apparently said that he's prepared to help out if need be.
Yes, how kind of him to help out.
Yes.
He's obviously got a positive relationship more now so with the king. His brother, though, I think if they want a full reconciliation, that will have to be addressed, obviously. And then you've got Catherine, and then they would have to come into the realm as the fabulous four again. I mean, there's so much that needs to be done for a full reconciliation to happen. I just don't see how this is going to happen when he's not a senior member of the royal family anymore in terms of a working capacity.
Do you think he's slightly now realising what he's actually done? Do you think any of it is getting through to him?
Well, he's advised by their PR firm, who they've changed various times, who I'm sure are saying, you're making fabulous moves. But they keep on switching what they're doing from the Spotify deals to small start-up deals.
Well, I don't think they had any choice with Spotify, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely got their money's worth, though, didn't they?
Well, they did, yes.
Millions of pounds later for how much work? Well, I'm not quite sure about that. But they certainly got the views, and it was #1 on Spotify, so there you go. To a certain extent, but in terms of business strategy, I don't see how they can keep ongoing with all of these, books, Spotify deals, because they've revealed so much already, but as well as keeping the family's trust, because if Harry does want to come back into the realm, the family need to trust him. This is the issue. And having private conversations, which are needed to happen to have a full reconciliation, but knowing it's going to be kept private, well, that's going to be the barrier, isn't it?
Well, I think also he uses the veil of the Invictus Games to kind of do everything. So, for example, the Good Morning America interview, he was actually filmed doing that interview, but with the film crew that was Christopher Reeve's son who was filming. But the fact that it's also the Invictus Games, so we can reveal all this and have our own bit of footage, and no one's going to question it, or so he thinks, because it's all for a good cause. So I think he's been quite sly with that as well.
Well, that is one thing. And what he also does need to realise is that whenever he does these interviews, the reason why people are talking to him, yes, the Invictus Games is brilliant, of course it is, but they're going to want something more. We both know as journalists, when you speak to people, you need to find, the gems in that interview, and that's not just to plug or promote what they're promoting. You're going to ask questions surrounding that. And of course, that's going to be about the royal family. He has been in room with the king. His father. People are going to want to know what's going on there. And unfortunately, that's just a conversation that he will have to reveal, or he's going to have to keep private. And from that, then we'll be able to tell really what his true intentions are.
He's crawling his way back, isn't he? Let's be honest, because he knows his brother William isn't as soft as the dad. William I don't think we'll have any stuck with it at all, especially seeing as the insults that have been hurled towards Camilla, and also the fact that in all of this, Catherine has been one of the people who has suffered because of this. And Catherine is William's wife. And a man who loves his wife, as Harry does Meghan, will do anything for them.
That is something perhaps they'll both agree on. You know, they very much turn to their wives.
Which will be the very reason why he should know that William's not going to...
Yeah, I don't think so, which is so sad, sad. But until these conversations happen and apologies happen, there is going to be a point where, you know, the wall is going to go up. So one of them's going to have to budge. Well, who's it going to be?
Well, Harry's waiting for an apology.
I mean, will he ever get it? Will he ever get it? I think he might be waiting a while.
I don't think he thinks he needs to give one at all, Harry. I think he thinks that it's... but what do you think to Meghan then? Because she's now moving on to a sort of lesser platform, as though it's her choice. Lemonada, I think it is, or something. And doing smaller things, another podcast.
Smaller, I guess, a podcast remit for her. I'm sure it will grab audiences and, you know, further down the line we'll probably be talking about what she speaks about and what guests she brings on. Let's hope she can actually be in the same room as these guests this time when they actually speak on the podcast, because there was talks afterwards where she tried to get people on, but she wasn't going to be in the same room as them. Well, if you're going to do a podcast, it would be nice to actually be in the same room as the guests, no?
Well, if you can be, yes. You know, I think if you can be, then if they're around the corner...
Yes,
then
if
why
they're around
not?
the corner. Yeah. Well, that's also a whole nother conversation, isn't it? But I think this move to another smaller podcast realm will enable her to perhaps have a little bit more control over the narrative of the podcast, which for her is a massive plus.
Do you think? I thought she was in control of the last one. I'm pretty sure she was.
Well, Spotify also did push back and said we do need more.
That was the problem,
and I think that was the issue, and then got met with a, well, I can't give more sort of attitude. So perhaps this will allow her to have a bit more control of the narrative. And I'm actually interested to see what else, you know, she can say.
What is it that guy said? Was it the guy from Spotify who called them grifters? Do you remember that? That was very funny, to be fair. Do you think that Harry and Meghan are on the same page when it comes to it? Because if you consider that Harry may be kicked out of America, he might be. He did, you know, if he hasn't admitted that he's taken drugs on the form, they may consider it, because it wouldn't be fair if they're prepared to throw people like Nigella Lawson out, but not.
This is true,
but not him. Why should he get a special?
Well, quite. I think Harry has also expressed in the last week or so how much he enjoys his life over there. His children are there, Meghan is there, and you can obviously tell how much he is in love with Meghan. And of course, his children, he wants to be there for them. But in terms of, you know, future plans in 10 years or so, I mean, I'm probably going to say something and then I'm going to look back on it and think, why have I said that? But I don't think that Harry, you know, will want to be there in 10 years' time, because he'll have exposed all of the secrets of the royal family. He's had the book deal. He's had everything. What else more is there to say? I think there is part of him that's grown up and he'll want to, you know, feed his inner child and come back to the UK and be closer to his family, especially, you know, in 10 years or so when the king is more elderly. He'll want to be close to his family.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
You'd think.
But remember what happened with Prince Philip?
That would be the natural instinct. But then he would have to bring all of his children and his wife over at the same time, which I think will be the issue.
They both haven't even met the king. Only one of them. I think that's tragic. The kids have yet to meet their grandparents properly. I think I don't know what they're thinking. But then when I say grandparents, I also mean Meghan's family as well.
Yes.
Because obviously she has yet to take her children to meet her dad.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously got a close relationship with Doria, Meghan's mum, but yeah.
It's tragic. Pandora Forsyth, thank you very much. Well, if you just tuned in, welcome. This is GBN America. Keeping in with the Sussex story lines, but going across the pond, one of our regular guests on GBN America, Lee Cohen, has written an op-ed piece for The Telegraph on Sussex's popularity, not only with the public, but with the royal family themselves. Lee Cohen. You're there. Lee, talk to me about this. So you've written in The Telegraph. Talk to me about what you wrote and what does it say?
Well, once again, it's a pleasure to speak to you, Nana. Listen, as I wrote in the piece, against criticism for these ridiculous rebranding efforts, the Sussexes defiantly vow not to be broken. but in fact, they have broken themselves through their transparent treachery that Brits have long known and Americans have finally woken up to. During Harry's interview on Good Morning America, he professes love for his family following the King's cancer diagnosis, which is a reasonable reaction. But this statement is mystifying, Nana, considering that the multitude of offences and disrespects committed by the prince and his wife against the royal family.
I mean, it's just shocking, isn't it? Yeah, it's just shocking.
It's shocking.
Yeah, it's astonishing.
You know, their vendetta against the family and the institution of monarchy is no mere family feud, because the royal family represent the British nation. So it really is an insult to the nation. And whatever you call it, this poisonous pair are a distraction to state affairs and a constant insult to the nation they abandoned.
Yeah, and for us it is a bit shocking. You say that Parliament should strip them of their titles.
Well, yes, because apparently that's the mechanism for this to happen. Because how can Parliament or anyone, I don't profess to tell the king what to do or recommend what the king should do. This is his family and he's the king. But how can the nation sit back and allow this poisonous pair to continue to insult the nation? And then, Nana, there's the timing of this. We want to give Harry the benefit of the doubt, but after so many episodes, it's clear that no matter what side of the Atlantic you're on, the Sussexes are monsters beyond redemption. I mean, who but the lowest of the low? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening. Who but the lowest of the low is getting good. Carry on.
I mean, who but the lowest of the low would swan about self-promoting when their family members are in the midst of serious health crises?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's a perfectly legitimate question as well. And they also don't seem to show any real empathy for what has happened. So I think Harry still thinks that he is deserved of the apology. I can't see that what he's doing is what he's accused them of.
Well, you know, this goes along throughout their tenure. The Sussexes have demanded apologies when it's they that have caused the offence. I mean, none of their rebranding coincided with the King and Catherine's illness. They went forward with the Oprah interview, even as Prince Philip lay ill in hospital. And now the content of this new rebranding of this website is cringeworthy self-promotion of their self-manufactured accomplishments. You expect this of Meghan, but shame on Harry.
Yeah, and the thing is, Sussex.com was actually announced just after the King's diagnosis. You could hold back with that, couldn't you? Because they realised he had an enlarged prostate. Catherine was ill. You could sort of wind your neck in a little bit and just allow that to process before you launch Sussex.com. Instead, it still feels like they think, hey, it's perfect timing, let's do it again.
Well, and the trouble is, while you want to give Harry the benefit of the doubt, everyone can feel concern for him, for his concern for his father. When this happens time after time with the timing, something goes on in the UK, and then the Sussexes do something that appears to shift the focus back to them as a reminder to say, here we are. Yes, we still have ties to the royal family. That's why I want Parliament to act. I don't want them to continue to have ties. I mean, he'll always be the son. He'll always be a prince. But to continue to gratify them with a status that enables them to monetize everything is just beyond the pale.
Yeah, and that's what this is about, let's be honest. It's about making money, and that's what they consistently do, using the Sussex brand and the royal family as the hook to get people in. Now, Harry is trying to become an American citizen, I think. I mean, that's what seems to be going down. And he got in there, and we don't know whether he's confirmed whether he admitted that he takes drugs or not, and has taken drugs, although he did in spare. But on the forms, we don't know. If he does become an American citizen, what are the implications Or is it likely that he might not become one?
Well, it's an interesting question you pose. I think that Harry will likely never pursue U.S. citizenship, even though he expressed in the interview that this thought has crossed his mind. Unlike Meghan, who was U.S. born and was able to accept her title through marriage, the title conflict arises if one elects to go through the process of U.S. citizenship application. And why would he jeopardize the only status, Nana, that makes Harry and his wife relevant and interesting? So I don't think that Meghan will let him do that in case it affects her own status.
Do you guys, what's the feeling in America now? Because I always wonder how popular they actually are in America. Is the vibe that, they're just grifters?
I think that is an eternal vibe. But despite their lofty rebranding and invented accomplishments, without royal status, Harry and his wife are nothing more than social influencers. I mean, Hollywood execs have said it themselves. Agent Jerry Zimmer have famously proclaimed them talentless. And then there was the other episode that you mentioned in your last interview, where they were called by, I believe it was the Spotify exec, they were called grifters, and that will stick with them forever because it is just so appropriate. But after their fall, and that was after their fall from grace with the streaming platforms. But in America, they are now the butt of insults and jokes from everything from cartoons to comedians.
Oh, it's not gone well for them, has it? It's gone totally wrong.
Well, perhaps it's divine justice, Nana.
Yeah, do you know what? Absolutely karma. Lee Cohen, thank you so much. A pleasure to talk to you. That was Lee Cohen. He's the advisor on Great Britain to the US House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee. For the latest from GBN America, just go to gbnews.com/America. I'm Nana Akua.